So we've discussed now some of the common software problems that you might encounter. Let's take a look now at some of the causes of those problems. And to begin, we'll address the user account control, or UAC. This is in Windows. Now, the Unix flavor of this is known as sudo, which stands for substitute user do. And in other words, it means that you can run an application using a different set of credentials than those you've used to log in with. So the whole idea is that you should generally log in with an account that is not administrative, even if you are an administrator. The idea being that for day-to-day operations that you just don't need elevated permissions for, you really shouldn't be logged in with an account that does have these elevated permissions. In case somebody corrupts your account or circumvents your own login, or if you just get up to go get a coffee and leave the system unattended, it's logged in with that administrative account, so that somebody else could, of course, come along and compromise that. However, certain applications may not support UAC or sudo configuration. But in one way or another, the user account control may simply cause issues with account permissions and access rights on the particular resource. So you're trying to run the application and you're simply getting errors, maybe because you don't have permission. Then that indicates that you should make use of the user account control to elevate your privileges if you can. But you, of course, need to know what those elevated credentials are. And if you are using it and the application is still failing, it might simply indicate that it does not understand, if you will, this elevation of permission. So it depends on the application, of course, but these can be some of the issues. So those features, can be configured to a certain degree to hopefully find compatibility with the application. Corrupted files, of course, can always appear, and they could be the result of a faulty save, a virus or a bug in the application, or of course a bad sector on the disk. So the application is simply trying to find the files it requires to load, and they're corrupted by some means. Then obviously the application is going to encounter problems. Lack of hard drive space. If you discover that your storage simply seems to be running out of available space for no apparent reason, you do need to check the log configuration. Make sure that it is set to archive out the older ones so that they're not just getting larger and larger and larger. And extraneous temp files. All applications generate temporary files, but a lot of malware and viruses will sort of send the temp file creation well above what it should be. So all of a sudden you open up any temp folder and there's just thousands upon thousands of temporary files. That is usually indicative of some kind of malware. If it's just a lack of system resources, it could certainly be a faulty process, one that has consumed too much in terms of the resources. It could be a memory leak, and it simply could be any kind of an issue with the application itself. But the system basically says it's out of virtual memory, or it simply doesn't have any processor time left, or it just takes forever for the application to load, things like that. Virtual memory, again, if you're relying on virtual memory, the problem basically is that you don't have enough physical memory, but you still need to make sure that your virtual memory is configured correctly and that the page file itself is not corrupt. And if it's fragmentation, of course, you can defragment your drives at any point in time, but the heavier the fragmentation, then the longer it's going to take for any application to load or find the files that you needed to locate. Print server drivers and services. Again, always make sure that all of your drivers are the most up-to-date and, of course, the correct version. And do take note of this. This is pretty important here. 32-bit versus 64-bit is what this is. The x86 platform is 32-bit. And then, of course, this is the 64-bit platform. And you cannot mix and match the driver version with the operating system version. It has to be consistent. So if it's a 32-bit operating system, it has to have 32-bit drivers. And, of course, 64-bit OS has to have 64-bit drivers. So you may have simply downloaded the wrong one, and that's what's causing all the failures. And if it again is an issue with just printing, in most cases, you can usually just restart the print spooler service. That usually corrects issues with printers. If necessary as well, consider entirely uninstalling the printer and reinstalling it. But again, always make sure that you have the correct driver. So again, like everything, it's stuff that you just have to keep on top of, and you need to make sure that you've got the correct configurations and the correct versions and all of that kind of stuff.